I will talk about what does it take for a complete consumer identity management solution, or do you need more than one tool anyway? It's I think an interesting topic because we see this shift towards consumer identity. We see this as a big thing, a big trend. So I started many years ago in the enterprise identity space. In fact, my roots in identity management go back to the late 1980s, where I started with things like LAN Manager, early versions of LAN Manager, and early versions of NetWare and things like that, or Banyan Wines. So the older amongst us might remember Banyan Wines. Not that many, which are indicating that I have this experience as well. So I have a long history, and so it was always, for a long time, it was employee-centric. But I also remember that more than 10 years ago, I had these discussions with organizations when they said, okay, we want to implement a new identity system. I said, yes, okay, but don't look only at your employees, because they are partners, they are customers. And even if you might say, I start with the employees, supporting them first, at some point, you will need this access for customers as well. And then, so the last couple of years, we saw this shift towards consumer identity management solutions, where we observed a large uptake, and that's where I want to talk about a little today. So let's start with what are the sort of the top use cases for doing consumer identity access management or consumer identity management, customer identity management. I personally tend to use the term consumer identity management because it's the sort of the bigger term, and the consumer then sometimes becomes a customer or not. But you also need to manage these identities. So yes, there's one use case which is target marketing for increased revenue. Obviously, you want to know your customer, in that case, when it's about revenue better, and you want to serve him well with targets to know more about him, to do better marketing, etc. There's the use case, so many come from the authentication. So how do I identify, how do I sign on my customer? It's another very important use case where many of the projects start. So coming really from this, oh, I need an ID for my customers, I need to sign on them. Which also leads into this interesting question we already touched. Is it my ID or is it something where I can use different IDs which I then map to my internal customer records? Regulatory compliance, another important thing. So having a correct onboarding process, that's what we already have. So you need to bring in the terms and conditions thing, etc. But it goes beyond that right now. It's really like what is happening with GDPR. Obviously, handling consent centrally becomes a very important issue. And I think there's no way to get rid of handling consent centrally, because if you do it per app and per application, it will be hard to ensure that you always know, oh, this consent already has been revoked, and if the one app doesn't get that information, then you have an issue. So I think there's an absolute need for handling consent information centrally and consistent, and avoid that there are different states of that information you have in different systems. A better user experience, yes. At the end, consumers want to have a simple experience. I sign on. I have a simple registration process, and I particularly don't need to register multiple times. I had this experience over the years, and you know, sometimes I even say, okay, I don't do that business, I don't do that deal, because I don't like to register again. So if you, whatever, have a car manufacturer and you need to register first with the car manufacturer, and then you need to register with his finance company for the leasing, and you need to do it twice, then that already might be a showstopper. Because say, okay, there should be easier ways. De-anonymizing users, tricky area, but at the end, Really, we want to understand who it is, move the people to, I know the customer, I can serve him well, and I think with GDPR it will be also a little bit more about finding a good balance between the customer and his interest for privacy and the business interest of doing more business with him. So we, a couple of weeks ago, maybe months, not that long ago, we published a report which is titled the Consumer Identity and Access Management Buyer's Guide, where we bring up criteria, so the most important functional criteria, the most important non-functional criteria, etc., for selecting such a solution. So in the interest of time, I will not go through every single of these. Obviously, there are a couple of very important things. So user self-registration, but also import of data from users is clearly one. The support for consent mechanisms. The dashboards will become very important because with all the consent stuff, it also means we need to show the data we have stored, the PII we have stored. We need to show a lot of information here. Delete and or export customer profiles, yes. Data rights and GDPR mandate this. Policy notification, scalability, white labeling, etc. There are a lot of these criteria, and I have another slide on that where we see several others. So also there's areas like fraud intelligence, marketing analytics, marketing automation. IoT integration will clearly become a more and more important one. So there's really a variety of capabilities we need when we want to manage consumer identity. It's not just saying I have a sign-on. It's far more than a sign-on. And more details on that, as I've said, you can find in the report. But it shows there's a lot of things such a solution might require, but it depends also on the use case. And so probably, I don't know, it's good enough to read. So what we did here is we matched these functional selection criteria or functional requirement areas to these top 5 use cases I've mentioned before. And if it's a full colored circle, then it means it's a high priority. If it's the light one, then it's a low priority. And so it makes it very clear. Not every functional criteria has an equal relevance for each use case. So it depends on your use case or your use cases. You have your consumer identity management, so what you really want to achieve and what you need to achieve, which are the really relevant criteria. And that also means there might be some solutions which are a better fit and solutions which are not as good fit. Or it might also, so if you look at, for instance, so the authentication option line and the targeted marketing line, there's not that much overlap. So there might be even a scenario where you say, okay, I have one tool which is really more on the marketing automation end, and I have another one which is more on the sign-on end, because I have high requirements for both. I need both areas, and I could better solve it by using more than one tool. And I think it's very important to understand what are your use cases and which requirements you have for these use cases to identify the ideal solution. And that also then, I think, correlates with the fact that it's not that we have a totally homogeneous and mature market for consumer identity management solutions. So that market is not that old. So it started a couple of years ago. In fact, you could also argue that some of the enterprise identity management products had some capabilities, but in fact, consumer identity management solutions appeared only a few years ago. And all of us, when we are in the IT industry, we know it takes a while until markets mature, and then the offerings become more and more homogeneous because all the more important features are added. So the one lacks what the marketing part, the other lacks the login and authentication part, and then they try to close these gaps, and over time products get more and more similar. So if you look at very mature markets, whatever, take enterprise single sign-on, when we stay in identity management, or identity provisioning, or if you go out of that for whatever endpoint security solutions, they are far more similar when it comes to the core features. And so here we have a not that mature market, which is also based on the fact that consumer identity management products have very different roots. So we have the ones which are derived from enterprise identity management, where the vendors say, okay, we can't scale enough, we add the other features, we grow in that area. We have the grassroots consumer identity management startups, so the companies, and with every popular market segment, we always have the startups. We have these new companies appearing in that market. And we also have some in that space. We have the ones who enter the market more from marketing automation end, from an IDaaS end, so saying, okay, we are very good in doing identity as a service, and because we do it as a service, we can scale, and blah, blah, blah. Some of the players more from Web Security Federation are entering the market, from CRM, and potentially we might even see others from other angles which are entering this market, which means, in fact, it's not that there's one approach where they all come from, and it also means, depending on where a vendor comes from, he obviously has some different strengths. So if you started in enterprise IAM, you're most likely pretty good in doing workflows, because that's one of the key things in enterprise IAM. For IDaaS it means scalability and some other things, but your workflows might be not as good as the ones of the vendors which come from the enterprise IAM angle. And so it really differs, and that also means, as I've said, there's not the one single perfect solution maybe. And we also need to be clear about consumer identity is more than, for instance, just consent. And when you do consumer identity right, I just picked one point, and this, in fact, it's the third line. There's a lot of other stuff you do, and GDPR also says one part of it is implementation of appropriate technical and organizational security measures. This shows up in various articles of the GDPR. What it means is, consent handling is one thing, and all are currently very focused on consent handling. But in fact, it is, you also need to have all the other measures, so standard security things, strong authentication, web access, web application firewalls, whatever else in place, because they are privilege management, because they are the sort of the state-of-the-art technical measures. And so it means also that there are different angles on consumer identity management from that perspective. It's not only that part, but if you want to implement a complete solution for your consumer identity management, it's more than the consent piece, it's more than just that. So that's a slide I brought up, I think, last year at the, during one of my speeches at the Consumer Identity World. So it's a little bit more content on that, but I'll try to focus very rapidly on what it is about. So when you look at consumer identity management, the point is there are many parties involved. There are many ways potentially to do it. And the one thing is, when you look at the business departments, the one question is, do you end up with multiple consumer identity management implementations because different departments or different brands or different branches of your business started themselves, or do you try to centralize it? Centralizing means you have some challenges because there might be different requirements, branding and the corporate identity, but also supporting different regulations in different regions, etc. Anyway, I'm a big believer in saying there should be one approach on that, which is consistent, which might be sort of a service in that case, and also between business and IT. I think it's very obvious. Consumer identity management is not an IT thing. Not in the sense of IT can do it. IT is the one who should provide a service, operate it themselves or used as a service or procured from the cloud. But it's this way you have to split. At the end, it's a business thing. The consumer, that's where the business connects to the outer world, where the revenue comes from. And on the other hand, I think it's very dangerous to run consumer identity management sort of as a shadow IT thing, because there are so many dependencies to the rest of the things you're doing in IT that you need to operate it well. And then you have this enterprise IAM, so EIM, I call it consumer identity management. And I think it's hard to run one identity management that fits all, because you have complex workflows, different workflows for your employees than for your consumers. On the other hand, you have a totally different scalability requirement for your consumers than for your employees in most organizations. So it's not that one size fits all. On the other hand, just saying, okay, I have my consumer identity management here and my enterprise identity management here, no one talks with each other, from my perspective, also doesn't work. For a variety of reasons, and one of the reasons is also consumer identity management and all the related systems need, for instance, some access governance. You need to understand who has access to what. That doesn't go away for that part. And you need to control access to the consumer identity management system and all the related systems themselves, because some of your employees will access it. You need to do it that way. So you need to understand where these overlap and where the borderlines are. So my perspective is you need to understand how this works. Running as an IT operated service driven by the business, central CIAM strategy in your business, and integrate it well. Understand where does it overlap, how does it integrate with your existing identity management. And so what does it take right now for moving to consumer identity management? I think the first step really is understanding your requirements. So what are your use cases? Where do you come from? What do you want to achieve? What do you have? Don't underestimate the security, compliance, and governance requirements for consumer identity management. They don't go away. And this, by the way, the same with cloud services. If you move from an on-premise system to a cloud service, your access governance requirements and the compliance requirements don't go away. They just become more complex. Define your sort of one identity management strategy in the sense of, I know I have one big view on how I handle the different types of identities, and I understand what it needs, what are the required capabilities, and I understand which building blocks, which technical building blocks, which tools deliver these capabilities. And also understand how it fits in the bigger information security picture. So, define also how your consumer identity management integrates and differentiates from what you have in CRM, for instance, in marketing automation, etc. And then you've got your consumer identity strategy. Okay, it takes a little, but I think it's important to understand how this works with all the other elements, to understand which tool do you need or which set of tools do you need. So this is just my input for today.